welcome to Leading the Follower with your host, Rebecca Benston. Hello and welcome to Leading the Follower. I'm Rebecca Benston and I am back after this long holiday weekend. As promised, I'm going to try to stop in here at least once or twice a week and share some thoughts with you about things that I'm studying, things that I'm experiencing, things that I feel might be useful to you. I hope that it is helpful and or at least entertaining in one way or another. So you can listen to me flounder my way through yet another podcast and maybe at least get a chuckle out of that. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about rebuilding after a time of chaos and destruction. I have been reading, obviously, in the book of Nehemiah after finishing a very uplifting and inspirational reading of the book of James. I moved on to the book of First Peter and found it to be extremely cumbersome to read at this point in time, so must not have been meant for me to do that right at this point. I'm going to turn my ringer off here. Um, so anyway, I read a couple of chapters out of First Peter, realized that probably wasn't meant for me at this time, and picked back up on the book of Nehemiah, which I've gone back to several times over the last 10, 12 years. It's been a recurring theme for me, rebuilding and having things get broken down to the point where I needed to fortify my walls, so to speak. So I picked it back up over the weekend, having had several days to do some extended prayer and some deeper thinking than normal. And I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving weekend and time with their family. It is always a good time for me. I love to get together with family and talk with people that I don't get to see on a regular basis, and just enjoy that time of fellowship and just enjoying each other's presence and good food, of course. So, as I was reading, I started to think, I've been looking at the book of Nehemiah since back in 2010. I think it was right after I left my husband, and um, during the time when I was adjusting to being a single person again. I had a lot of walls that had been broken down, just as a matter of course. When you're married, lots of walls come down between you and your spouse, and that is a very different type of relationship than just having, like a boyfriend or a girlfriend or whatever you may have had. Um, it's a very different experience when you're married, because there's so much trust that you develop from one another that you didn't have in other relationships. I can't really explain it. It just feels different. And I noticed that during the time that I was married. I was with my husband for nearly 11 years, and we divorced just shy of 10 years. Um, and it took quite a bit to be able to um, figure out who I was after that, because I had been a wife for so long that it just didn't feel natural to me anymore. The one thing that was a constant, however, because I was a mother when I divorced and I had my daughter with me, um, I was still able to be a mom and stay rooted and grounded in something that made sense to me. So thankfully, I had that to anchor me, that and God, and knowing that God would pull me through whatever I was dealing with. I I think my life took an extreme turn at that point, and the type of person that I had been just was never going to fit anymore. So I had to rebuild everything, and I needed a team of people to do that, but sadly I didn't have that. Um, so as I'm reading in Nehemiah about how they're rebuilding the walls and strengthening the gates all around the city of Jerusalem and trying to make sure that it's safe again, and that everything is okay. It occurred to me that we do have that in our own lives as well. If we look at ourselves as a city, and this is probably a stretch for some people, you may not see yourself in that way. Um, we do have gates that we let people in, and they're all around us, and they're different areas of our lives that we let different people into. And when I was married, I I had a whole different set of gates. You know, I had a whole different set of everything, and um, and all of that had to be rebuilt. I had to figure out where was it safe to let people in again. You know, and should I let anybody in? Should I just build the walls, protect me and my daughter, and leave it at that? And it ended up being much like that. Um, and for whatever reason, back then I was really heavily studying the book of Nehemiah and trying to really make some connections so that maybe it would help me through what I was going through. And because there are often distractions when we're in the middle of a rebuilding process, and anytime we're in the middle of a period of spiritual growth, we're going to come under attack. And sometimes it doesn't feel like an attack. Sometimes it's a distraction. Sometimes it's just a setback, or just a change in direction or whatever that wasn't meant to be. We don't understand that we're being taken off the course that God has us on. So I got off course and never really got back to it. And it feels like I've spent the last 13 years that I've been divorced um, in a period of rebuilding, of watching walls fall down, rebuilding. Maybe they're not as strong as they need to be, trying something different, going back, and just not having the success with that I may have wanted. But it does get better after a time. You just have to get your focus right. Um, One thing that stood out to me was how, um, as soon as some people heard that this rebuilding was going on, there was opposition to Nehemiah, and they didn't want him to rebuild those walls. For whatever reason, they felt the need um, to keep Jerusalem in its state of destruction. They didn't want to see it restored in any way. And whether you want to believe it or not, there are people in your life who feel that way when you've gone through a time of destruction, or when you've experienced a setback. There are people, unfortunately, who are not rooting for you, who don't want to see you rebuild or improve or get back to a place um, that is good and safe for you. And that's where we really need to use discernment. We need to be willing to cut people out of our lives when they are not healthy, when they are not positive forces, when they're working against us, when they're trying to pull us away from our faith or from what we know that God would want us to do. It's it's very difficult to weed that out, because especially if you're going through a time when you are struggling with having lost a significant part of your identity, or something, say you've been at a job for years and years and suddenly you don't have that job anymore. Your identity was wrapped up in who you were on the job. You're trying to figure out who am I now, because I'm not that worker or whatever. I'm not in that career, and that path has been redirected for me. Maybe it wasn't my choice. Maybe there was just no avoiding it. Um, you know, if you experience a loss in any way and you're no longer part of a couple because of a divorce or because of an accident, or maybe you lose a loved one. There's all sorts of things that can get in the way of the path that you are walking, and they can make it very difficult for you to press on, and you have to start to rebuild your identity from that point and figure out, what am I supposed to be doing here? How am I supposed to proceed when I don't know how to be anything else but what I've been? um, that's a very difficult place to be. But if you take the time to talk to God about these things, I know it's hard, and a lot of people may even feel like it's silly to sit down and pray, because you're not going to hear a resounding voice that comes back and says, "Hey, you're doing the right thing," or "You need to go here and you need to go there." It's not going to be that clear. The way that God answers us, He rarely speaks to us in a voice that we can comprehend easily. A lot of the time, it's going to be something you read or something you hear on the radio or in passing, something silly that you may not have thought would have any consequence, but then when you put it together with the other things that are happening in your life, you think, "Oh, well, that makes good sense. That's probably why that happened." Um, and God works through those little things to keep us going, to keep us motivated, because if He were to step in and talk to us in that way, in that booming God voice that we probably envision, that he's going to, there's going to be this big bright light, and He's going to step in and say, "Hey, Rebecca, um, you need to do this, this, and this." That's not going to happen. I doubt that's going to happen unless somehow I'm put in a movie where that is made to happen. I don't see that happening either. But God's signs and lessons for us generally don't come to us in a very clear cut type of a way, even though His message is clear once we are able to tune in and figure out what goes together and what doesn't. But we have to be paying attention. We can't be distracted by the opposition. We can't be afraid to continue working toward the rebuilding while holding our sword. Um, and in chapter 4 of Nehemiah, of course, it's where they talk about when that opposition came. Nehemiah told his people, you're going to have to like work with one hand on the rebuilding, and in the other hand have your sword at the ready, because it's just going to be that way. They're going to be coming after us. We need to be able to continue our work and defend ourselves should the need arise to do that. So So that's kind of where I was today. I was kind of reading along, and I was thinking back to the time when I was trying to rebuild, you know, one time when I was trying to rebuild. I'm always in a state of rebuilding, it seems. But at that particular moment when I was trying to find my identity as a person after divorce, I did feel the need to keep rebuilding, but also have my hand on my sword and be ready to tackle anybody that tried to come at me during that period of time. Now, the one thing that I came up with toward the end of that, though, was, am I too quick to reach for the sword and try to fight battles that I wasn't invited to? That is something I'll get into on my next podcast. This one, I think, um, I'm at a point where I need to stop recording for the day. I have got to get back to work. It is almost time to start my Monday, and I need to prepare myself for that because I'm certainly not done with my Thanksgiving break yet. But um, but I wanted to stop in and share just a little bit about that with you, and I can get more detailed, I guess. I'll try to get into it a little more on the next podcast. But the thing is, understand that when you are in a period of rebuilding, there's going to be opposition. You need to be able to um, lean on God, keep the faith, stay strong, stay focused. Don't let the distractions get to you. Be ready to fight those off. Be ready to defend yourself, but keep working, keep pushing, and don't give up on it. Um, in Nehemiah, it said that the people had a mind to work, and we have to have a mind to work if we're going to be able to successfully restore our identities and move ahead on the path that God has for us. So keep that in mind with the battles that you face today and this week, and go forward with the knowledge that God is never going to send you into a battle He doesn't equip you for. And if you're in a battle and you feel like you're not equipped, you probably weren't invited to that one. And you may need to just step out of it and go back and figure out which one you're supposed to be fighting, because that can get a little tricky. But just stay the course, keep rebuilding, keep moving, and try to have a good day and a good week. And I'll be back with you later this week. God bless. Thanks for stopping by. Be sure to check out our website and blog. The blog is at www.leading-the-follower.com. Thanks and God bless.